Hello, how you doing?
I'm good. Good evening.
Good to hear. You see my screen over here? All right. All right. Okay. Let's see. All right, just a few more minutes. All right, let's get started. Hey, welcome back. Hope you had a great weekend. Let's see. So let's. Last week we introduced JavaScript as the programming language of the web. Right. We up to that point we had been using just HTML and CSS as declarative languages to specify how we wanted to lay out content, right? That either lay it out as tables or lists or paragraphs, headings, and then use the CSS to make it look a little more prettier, right? So we learned how to position things exactly where we wanted it, whether we wanted to lay out horizontally or vertically, right? And also how to make it responsive so that as you resize the screen, it would adapt, right? But all that was using declarative languages, right? Telling the browser how is it that we want things to render, right? But there was no real interaction, right? Even though we did introduce the forms, buttons and input fields and text areas where we can type, but we can't do much with it. So last lecture we discussed JavaScript as a programming language, a functional programming language that is going to allow us to program the browser, right? Allow us to programmatically generate these user interfaces instead of declaratively, write them by hand. Instead, we can now write algorithms that have complex uh, if statements and loops and data structures that can transform data and user input into a user interface, or that we can compute the user interface based on some static content plus some state changes, right, and events as the user interacts with the application, right? So we introduced that last lecture. So this lecture we're going to continue that discussion, and we're going to introduce additional skills that we need to learn about programmatically. Not only so last week we discussed the basics of the programming language um, within the context of React.js, right, and being able to import components and render them as tags. So we're going to continue discussing that, in particular how we can programmatically style the application, right, where we can compute the CSS and so that we can highlight things based on the location or based on some algorithms and computation, and also be able to um, navigate. Right, we did introduce the fact that we're implementing single page applications, and that basically means that we first navigate to an index.html page and never navigate away from it. Right, we always stay there. Whereas when we were working with HTML, we had hyperlinks that when you click them, you would navigate away from that particular HTML document, and then you would load a completely different HTML document. So does that mean because it's a single page application, we're never going to navigate? Well, no, obviously. So we're going to introduce a mechanism that's going to allow us to implement the functionality, right, of displaying different things, different screens, different components, right, based on you interacting with the user interface. So definitely discuss that, as well as discuss additional, revisiting the Canvas application, right, converting them into components so that we can put it together using React.js as opposed to just plain old HTML and CSS. Okay, so that's the plan for today. I will make available the quiz, not today. I need to make it available tomorrow, and so that will be available later tomorrow. The assignment. So everybody should be working on assignment 3. I did share the source code for the branch A3, right, that contains the source code that we've been working here together. So please make sure to take a look at that. Right? If you find it helpful, you're welcome to reuse it as you wish, right, as your own. I think it's a good place to start, right, so that you don't have to start from scratch. You get to take a look at the exercises, how they were built, get them up and running, finish them up, polish them. I did skip over a few of them. Please complete all those missing exercises. All right. All right. Excellent. Any questions before we get started? Okay, so first let's review where we got to. Up to what point did we complete some of the exercises from last lecture? Let's see. So we had gotten started with the assignment 3, and as all the assignments, it's split into two halves. Right, the first half is a set of exercises for you to practice certain skills. Some basic skills in this case was getting to know the language, right? And we went through several features of the language, some really simple stuff such as variables, right, and data types, and Boolean operators, and conditionally displaying certain things based on Boolean expressions. We also worked on different function types that from ES5, right, before ES6, the ones that use just regular function keyword. We then talked about ES6, right, the new syntax with the new arrow syntax. We talked about what were some of the benefits of using this new syntax, right? And we created components for each one of these, right? And the way we built them was that we revived the React application, right, with the index.tsx, right? We uncommented it, right, and then we focused on implementing the app component, right? That was kind of like the root, the root components, right? And then loaded all the other components. We discussed how it's that we can break out content into various files or even folders that contain index.tsx files, and then focus on several exercises for assignment 3, and each one of these was a separate component, right? So for assignment 3, we focused mostly on the JavaScript exercises, and we discussed variables and variable types and Boolean expressions, ES5, arrow functions, implied returns. We discussed arrays, right? Lots of different exercises on learning about arrays and how to iterate over them using the map function, right, to accumulate various outputs into a target array, right, and then use that to render the dynamic content. We discussed spreading and the destructing, right, where we can destruct, right, an object into its constituent pieces, right. and showed you that there's object destruction and there is array destructing, right? Not destruction. We're not destroying anything. We're destructing, right? Meaning instead of structuring or creating a data structure, we are destructing the data structure, right, into its constituent pieces. So yeah, we got to all the way up to destructing right here, right? The the only other thing that I did want to discuss that we didn't get to last lecture is a very important syntax that we are going to use quite a bit throughout the semester, which is using the destruct syntax, but in the context of function parameters. When you pass parameters, right, to a function, the destruct syntax come in very handy. It's widely used in the React community, right? So let me demonstrate this. So let's create here a function destructing under functions here. New function destructing, and let me just copy the content and let's go over it together. So let's see. So we have obviously the component call is function destructing, and it's declaring two functions, right? And so let's take a look at these two functions. First, the first one, right? This is a regular function, the add function, and it takes two arguments, two integers, right? Here they are, A and B. And perhaps it might be easier if we declare them outside like that. There's a function, and here's a second function, right? And let me put them all outside as separate functions. And so here we're calling the first function add, right there. There it is, right? And passing A and B, and we're returning the value A plus B. Nothing peculiar about it, only that here we are declaring the data type of the parameters, okay? But other than that, it's just a regular function. Very good. And you call it using the syntax that we are all familiar. And so A gets 1 and B gets 2. Yes? Nothing peculiar about that. So check this out, this other syntax, right? Here's subtract, again, a function call, right? And here we're calling it, there it is, right? But look at the parameter list. The parameter list says that we are receiving this curly thing, A comma B. What is that? Well, look how we're invoking it, right? Here we're invoking the primitive data types 1 and 2. Whereas here, notice that we're passing a JSON object, right? We're passing an object that has two properties, right? A and B. So really, we're passing to subtract only one single parameter, right? And notice what happens here. Subtract is receiving that object, and what it's doing is destructing the object into its constituent pieces, right? A and B. A and B are the parts, right? And we are assigning to A and B whatever the values of the properties A and B were, right? So we get here A is 4 and B is 2. Okay. So and then we're declaring the data types of our parameter, saying that it is an object that have two integers or two numbers, A and B, are of type number, and then we are just returning the value of A minus B. Okay. So this syntax is actually very popular in the React community, right? Let's see if I can just show you again one more time. If I say params, right, and I declare an object, C is 3 and D is 4. That's just an object, right? And then I call a function that is called const multiply, right? And then it receives as a parameter an object. Okay. And the object is of type C is a number, right? And D is a number. Okay. And so how would we multiply? It would be, you could say object.c and object.d. Okay. I think you would be okay with this syntax, right? It's nothing different than any other programming language. I'm receiving an object. This is the data type of the object, and the multiplication is the C and the D in the object that I want to multiply, right? And I'm calling it using the product is you multiply, you pass the parameters. Yes? Right? No, I don't think you would object to this syntax. Okay. Now, a slightly better representation of this object, right? If you're going to use it using a more modern syntax, is that you would do the destruct before using it. You could do something like const C, like that, right? And once you destruct the object, you have C and D, this becomes C times D. Is that correct? Everybody okay with that? Right? But notice that object is only being declared intermediate only so that I can extract C and D. Right? So why even bother having this intermediate object? Right? We could just do this, right? We could just put it here, and we don't need this. See that? Right? That's where this subtract syntax comes from, right? And because now I only have a single return, right? I can use the more compact syntax of no return, right? And no need for this curly bracket. Do you see that? Okay. So that is where that syntax comes from, of using curly brackets, right, to destruct the parameter that you're passing as an object. Right? And this, instead of passing the parameters, obviously I could just pass this like that, right? I don't even need this parameter. Yes? Everybody okay with that? Okay, so this syntax is very, very popular in the React community, and we're going to use this often, right? Quite a bit. All right, hopefully that made sense to you. So in JavaScript, we can bring in this new example. There it is. Okay. All right, so yeah, that was one last skill set that I wanted to describe to you. All right. Okay, so let's bring back a feature that we kind of lost when we abandoned HTML and CSS, and now we have single page applications. We can't just navigate anywhere we want, right? No longer are we going to have a hyperlink that if we click, is going to take us elsewhere. It's going to take us away from our index page. We want to stay always in the index page. So to do that, we're going to have to hack the browser so that it allows us to do navigation, but without leaving index.html. And the strategy basically is going to be that we're going to have multiple components. Each component is going to represent a screen, right? So for instance, we have here, right, in the app TSX, we already have a couple of screens here. Labs, it's kind of its own screen, right? That contains maybe, all the labs. And maybe even each assignment could be its own screen, right? Plus Canvas, definitely it's its own screen. And the Canvas actually has many screens, right? So it's kind of like an application on its own that has a whole bunch of screens, right? The home screen, the module screen, the assignment screen, the grading screen, has tons and tons of screens, and each one of them can have its own navigation, right? Its own links. Canvas needs the Canvas navigator, needs the course navigator, right? That allows it to go between the assignments and the homes and the modules and the grades, right? And Labs should also provide some kind of navigation that will allow us to navigate to the multiple assignments, right? So yeah, so definitely we need assignments to navigate between multiple screens. So how do we do that without leaving the index.html document? So we're going to use what is called a router that basically is going to allow us to use the mechanism of a hyperlink, right? That, when we click on the hyperlink, what happens? The URL changes, right? And normally it would tell the browser to go to another document. Instead, what we're going to do is that we're not actually going to go to another document, right? We're going to change the URL, but in such a way that it's not going to cause the browser to navigate away, right? It's always going to stay. We are going to change the URL, right, so that we can encode information in the URL. But then what we're going to do is going to say, well, when you see this particular URL, then show the Canvas component, right? When you see this other URL, then show the assignment 3 component. Right? We're going to create some kind of map, right, using this library called React Router, right, which is going to, instead of the way we have it here right now, everything's showing, right? In labs, assignment 3, we have presumably we would have also assignment 4 in the same screen. Assignment, Canvas would also be here with all the screens. Canvas would be here as well. Instead, we're going to say, well, we don't want to show them all at the same time, right? We're going to create a mechanism that is going to allow us to say, hey, if the URL looks like this, show labs. If it looks like that, show assignment 4, right? If it looks like that, then show Canvas assignments, right? The assignment screen. Make sense? All right, so let's do that. We're going to install this library, or maybe I already have it installed, but that's fine. I'll install it again. Paste. So React Router, and we'll need React Router DOM. All right, so let's copy that. Let's paste that. So that's going to download and install the library, which is going to allow us to create all this navigation. Okay, and let's do npm start again. Okay, so what we're going to do is that we're going to import what is called a hash router, and which is going to allow us to create this map. We're going to wrap our entire application with this map mechanism, this routing mechanism, right? So that internally we're going to be able to say, well, only show hello, don't show hello world, labs, and Canvas all at once. Only show them when the URL looks like something, right? So let's grab the hash router and let's add it to app.js, right? And then we're gonna just wrap the whole thing into a hash router like that. Okay. Okay, so right now it hasn't done anything because we haven't created the map just yet, right? It's still rendering the whole thing entirely, completely. So what we're gonna want to do is create kind of like an if-else statement, right? Or like a switch case statement that's gonna say, hey, if you see in the URL, like hello, then show hello world. But if you see /labs, then show labs. If you see /canvas, then show canvas. But don't show them all at once. Only if the URL looks like a particular pattern, then show these different components. Right. So let's do that. So we're going to import. We're going to import a few things from the router, right? In particular, these two for now, right? Routes and route, right? So routes allows us to declare the routes. So routes, like that. And this is kind of like the wrapping, like the switch statement, right? And then we're going to have like a switch case for each one of these one, like case, right? So we're going to replace. We're gonna wrap these guys. We're gonna wrap each one of them and say, okay, well, if it's hello, then we're gonna show hello world. So we're gonna wrap this here in a curly bracket. We're gonna say route if the path, right, looks like this. If it says, if you see hello world in the path, then I want you to render this particular element. Right? So that's literally an if else, right? So this says if the path in the URL you see hello, right, then show the hello world component. Right? So for instance, notice that if I save that, right, and I add a hello, or maybe, is it hello? Hello world? Well, let me finish all of them. Let me finish all of them. So let's do labs. So we'll do route, path, and this is element, bracket, and then close that. And then we'll do another route here, path, and this is element, curly bracket, like that, right? And what we're going to do is that if we see /labs, or if we see /canvas, right, then we render, there it is. So it says, if it sees hash hello, you see hello world. But if you see labs, you see all the labs, right? And notice that we don't have canvas at the bottom. See that? You only see canvas if you see canvas in the URL. See that? Okay. So now we've brought back the mechanism for being able to navigate, based on the URL. Notice that here there's a hash right there. See that hash? Right. Hash is a mechanism, a very old mechanism in HTML, right? That allow you to create a URL within the same page of that document, HTML, that URL, right? It would allow you to navigate within the same document. It would allow you to jump around, right, from one document to the next. Wikipedia uses this quite a bit. So if we go to Wikipedia and you go to SpaceX Starship. So see this left-hand side here, you have kind of like a navigation, right? And here's the URL, that's URL. If you click on, say, Starship HLS, notice the hash at the end. See that hash? That means that I am still in the same document. I am still drawing the same document, but I have navigated down, right, into a different section, right? So if I click on each one, notice that there's a different hash, right? But it allows you to stay in the same document and jump around in the same without leaving the same document, right? Notice that it's all in the same one HTML document, right? So what React.js does, right, what this particular plugin does, right, this React router, is that it takes over, right, that behavior, right, it overrides it with JavaScript, right, so that it can, instead of just navigating anywhere, what happens is that the browser is notifying the script, says, hey, somebody clicked on this, right, and this is the new URL, and what do you want to do? Right? And so what the React router library has done is that it's listening for these changes in the hash, right, at the end of the hash, right, and it's creating, together with this this code, it allows us to program, right, and declare what is it that we want to do with this, right? We want to say, well, if you have hash hello, then we show hello world, right? If you see hash labs, then labs, and so on and so forth. Everybody good? Okay. Now also one great thing is that the forward and backwards buttons work, right, as you would expect, right? There's a history, right? Just like here when you navigate between multiple screens, okay, it kind of remembers what is that it was rendering for that particular URL. And that mechanism is native to browsers, right? It's nothing JavaScript or anything like that. And this, even though React Router is hijacking that mechanism, it still works, right? So that you can go forwards and backwards, which has historically been problematic, right? Has been challenging to implement in web applications in general, right? in the early days, in the 90s, it was very common to have, when you were using these types of application, it says, careful, don't touch the back button, right? Don't use these buttons, right? Because all this was being done on the server side, right? And clicking these buttons meant that there was an additional submission, right? An additional request going out to the server and a recomputation of all the functionality on the server. Since this is now belongs to the client, right? There is no there's no risk that there's going to be a problem with the server. The navigation works as you would expect from prior implementations. Okay, so yeah, so a React Router, very, very cool little library, very powerful. Okay, so first of all, the assignment says to use is capitalized labs, and Canvas also capitalized. It doesn't matter. But also notice that we have a star at the end, right? So what that is going to allow us to do is we're going to be able to nest, right, and have additional routes within the canvas or within the labs, right? That's going to allow us to say, yes, all the labs start with /labs, but then in there might be other things I want to navigate under there. For instance, once I am in the labs, right, labs here, right, there are actually many assignments, and I'd like to be able to navigate between all of them, right, 3, 4, 5, and whatnot, right? So I can repeat in the labs additional navigation, right? I can say, I can bring here, I can import again routes and route, right? And in here is, I don't want to show all the assignments all at once, right? I might say, well, let's create a routes, right? Like this, right? And then I'm not going to show all the labs. Instead, I only want to show the assignment 3 when there's /A3, right? And I only want to show assignment 4 when there's /A4. Now this would be appended to, right, whatever we are already nested inside, right? So we're already nested in /labs, right? So this is a nested route, set of routes inside, already a particular context. We're already in the labs context, right? Because the way this labs, right, it's only displayed when it starts with /labs. Once you're in there, right, once you're in the labs, now you have another route, right, that allows you to navigate even further into additional assignments and whatnot. So we have labs. Notice that labs is rendering this part, but the switch case here is not rendering anything because there's nothing after labs. Right? So if I say A3, then it shows the assignment 3, but if this is A4, then it shows assignment 4, right? And I could do additional A5, A6, right? And you will, right, as you progressively go into the additional further into the assignments. Okay. Now it is very inconvenient having to, do all this here in the URL bar, right? Ideally, you would have hyperlinks, right, that would allow you to navigate, right? So, for instance, if you are in the labs, you would have hyperlinks that would allow you to navigate the various labs, right? So, for instance, what we could do is that in here we can have not hyperlinks, right? Because hyperlinks would actually navigate away, right, into other pages, and we don't want that, right? So we want something equivalent that looks like hyperlinks, but they're not going to navigate away, right? So we're going to create a link, right, that is going to allow us to navigate to assignment 3. Actually, I think we missed here /labs, like that. Right, so if assignment 3, it stays put, it's not going anywhere, right? But then I could have another one, assignment 4, right, that has the hyperlinks to assignment 4, like that, right? So that I can click between the two and navigate between the two assignments. And notice what it's doing is basically changing the URL, right? Labs A3, Labs A4, right? So here's 4, 3, there it is, 3, 4. And then the router runs again and compares the pattern in the URL, right? And then it says, well, if it changes and the pattern looks like so, then I show one component. If it looks something else, I'll show something else, right? So that's what these links are, right? So like that. I'll put a line in between. We could do similar for here. We could have a navigation that would allow us to also have links, right? Now these links do have to be inside of a hash router. So for instance, here I might have a link that says /hello. That will allow me to go to hello world. Only shows hello world, right? And then maybe have a separate one that would allow us to go to the labs. So labs, right? So here's labs, hello world labs, and maybe another one that allows us to go to Canvas. Right, so this would be /Canvas, like that, right? So I could go Canvas, Labs, or Hello World. Now Labs, it's kind of annoying that I'm clicking on Lab, but then I also need to click on the particular assignment. What we could do is that if you click on Labs, actually you go to the first lab or first relevant lab. So this would be maybe A3, right? So Canvas, when I click on labs, really takes me to lab A3 directly. And then once in there, I can go back and forth between the two, right? Hello world. Okay. Does this make sense? Ever still with me? Right? It's pretty trivial, right? We've been able to recuperate, right, the mechanism of navigation, which HTML already supports, right? But the native implementation for HTML, it doesn't work for us for single page applications, right? So that's why we had to use a library, right, to re-implement the behaviors of being able to navigate. Okay. All right. So what about if you don't type anything? If you don't, oops, what happened? No. Yeah. Notice that if I don't type anything and you are at the root, which is the default, I don't show anything, right? Because there's that pattern of nothingness, right, is not mapped to anything. So we can implement a default, right? Say that if if it's slash, right, if there's a root and there's nothing afterwards, if it's blank, basically, so this is kind of like a blank, then we can use a component that allows us to navigate to a certain place, right? So we would say that if it's blank, then it's as if you would have typed /hello, right? So there it is. So notice that if I empty this out, right, I'm kind of saying that the default is going to take me always to hello, right? Which I don't like that, right? So we're going to instead, by default, we're going to go to the A3, the first assignment. So the default is going to be to take us to the first lab. That makes sense? Okay. So notice that this component it's fine between the labs and Hello World, but not necessarily for the Canvas, right? When we're going to implement the Canvas implementation, we're not going to want the navigation to be up there so ugly, right? So typically what we might want to do is to have a dedicated kind of like a navigation component, right? That we can put like inside each one of the screens, and then each screen can decide what to do with it, right? If they want to show it or not show it, right? So for instance, when I navigate to Canvas, I don't want to see these links up there, right? I want to be able to not even show it, right? So what we can do is we can create a little component out of this, maybe a nav component. So let's see, we can have a component, and we can say nav.tsx, and put here a function nav, right? That basically these links, and I'm going to move them here. So we're going to say return right? And paste that in there. We're gonna have to import that, React, link, and we're going to need to close that and export, okay? So now, it doesn't have it anymore. It's gone. There's no way for us to navigate anywhere. So we can use that navigation, this nav TSX, where we can import it from wherever we actually want to be navigating from, right? So for instance, I can import it from the labs, right? I can have those links plus my new links here, nav, right? That would only show when I am in the labs, and same thing for the canvas. Where is it? Canvas here. And we can, if we want, programmatically, we want to show nav. So nav. There it is. I'm doing canvas. And also maybe in the hello world. Right, we can maybe wrap this in here. Right, and then maybe bring the nav here, nav. Right, so that while we're in Canvas, we can decide whether to show this link or not. Allows you to navigate to Hello World, to the labs, and once we're in the labs, we can go to the assignments. Plus, we can navigate back to the Canvas or Hello World and whatnot. Everybody good? Okay. Yeah. So that's the basic mechanism for implementing navigation. All right. Labs, navigating links. Yeah, we implement those links. And then a navigation component, we did that already. Very good. And then we used it in different places. The assignment does style it as tabs, right? Using the nav here. I guess we could do that, right? We can I go into the nav, right, and just wrap this with a nav here. Okay, and then the links themselves can also be styled as nav links using Bootstrap navigation classes. So we can paste these classes here, and then we don't need these vertical bars anymore, like that. Okay. Let's see how that renders. There it is. So it looks like a nice tab that allows you to go to labs, hello world, canvas. Okay. Now the power comes in now, right? That you can totally control that URL is that we can programmatically interact with this URL. We can read from the URL, right? Maybe even pass parameters alongside, like when you click and maybe you select a particular course that you want to view, right? That URL, we can encode the ID of that course, right? So that we could programmatically pick out the that ID and then programmatically decide to show one course versus another. Right? That's very, very powerful. So let's take a look at that. And so, for instance, here's an example that we create a component that can read parameters from a URL. Right. So let me demonstrate. So here in labs A3, we'll create a file on the routing at TSX, and here's the code. So let's paste that in there, and let's look at it for a second. So this is a component, right, that is going to be able to look at the URL. We'll have placeholders. We are going to have data that we're going to be able to read, right? And we're going to, and they're going to have particular names associated with them. In our case, it'll be A and B. And so these slots in the URL are going to have specific names. We're going to be able to pull those values, right, by name, right? And then internally, we're going to be able to, programmatically do something with it. In our case, we're just adding them up as integers. Okay? And we do that by using our first hook. Right? So React.js made a huge transition, from way back when, the original implementations of React.js was using classes. And it made a transition that components now were functional, right? That the main construct or syntax for building components transitioned from classes to functions, right? Classes were extremely verbose, right? They were very complex to put together, but it had a very important set of features that functions could not, right? They could maintain their own state, right? They could have properties, they could have, handle events internally. So they had a lot of features and things that they could do that functions could not, right? But what React.js did is that they implemented mechanisms that allowed functions to have exactly the same feature set that classes had through what are called hooks. Okay, basically they take the feature that would normally be available to the class and encapsulate it in a separate function that you would invoke, and then it would give you back the full functionality that you would need a class for, right? So basically negating any of the side effects or the negative side effects of not using classes, right? So now you have all the good benefits of using functions, right, without none of the negatives, right? One of the main reasons that we moved over to functions is that they are easier to test, right? So they are easy to increment the overall quality of the software. Okay, so this particular hook, now all hooks start with the name use, keyword use, right? Followed by a unique identifier, right? That describes the role of this particular hook, right? So this hook is implemented by the library React Router DOM, and the implementation is basically that it parses the URL, right, looking for parameters. That's why I use params, right? And then parses it, and then it gives you a map. It gives you an object. In our case, we are destructing that object. Right? We destruct that object is coming with some name properties, and somebody gave them the name. And we'll do that in a minute. And those are mapped to specific slots, right, in the URL, which we can pick out, right, and then do some arithmetic addition, right? So let's see how we do that. So here we have this is where we're going to put a hyperlink that was going to allow us to pass parameters to to encode data in the URL, and then we're going to be able to extract that, right? So let's copy from here, and in here we'll have routing, our path parameters, and let's copy the content. And what it's doing, it's loading the add component, the one we just built, all right, and creating two links, right? And what the links are doing is going to encode labs, right? That's what gets us into labs. Encode labs A3, like what gets us in assignment 3. And then we're going to append add, right? Append add, and then two values, 1 and 2, or 3 and 4. And we have two hyperlinks, 1 plus 2 or 3 plus 4. And then we're going to create here a route, right, that is going to render the add component, right, if the URL matches this path. It's going to render the add component, okay? And if it has this pattern, it's going to render add. And it has to start with A3, then followed by add, then followed by two placeholders. We're giving these placeholders names. right? That's what the colon says. The colon says that we are naming this placeholder. It's not a literal A or a literal B. These are literally A3/ADD. Those are literally the characters that we're expecting. Here, because it's colon, we're saying, no, this is not literally A. I'm not expecting A, the character A or the character B. I want to call these placeholders, right, these blanks, and I'm going to give them names, A and B. And that's where these names come, right, later on, so that I know that the placeholders are all A and B. It's going to look at the placeholders and say, oh, it's the last two. Oh, they should be called A and B. I'm going to parse the values. And I'm going to give you an object with the values of A and B. And you can get them here with use params. Okay. All right, so we have path parameters, and so we're ready to put it in our labs here. And this is, we'll do, in assignment 3, sorry, assignment 3. And we'll put it here in path parameters like that. And so we'll go to the labs. And so there it is. So 1 plus 2 and 3 plus 4. If we click on 1, 2, it did not render. Why are you not rendering? Path parameter. A3. Why are you not rendering? Add. A3, add A2. Does this have to be exact? Labs, A3. Why are you not rendering? Interesting. Labs A3. Add 1223. You are already. Do you not need that? No. Oh, all right. I'll need to fix this. Why is this not rendering? I'll take a look at this and fix it, and then provide the answer. Okay. Anyway, let's move on. Another mechanism that we can parse and take a look at the URL, right, of what's in the URL is to use use location, another hook, right? And that what we're going to be using it for is that, for instance, we would like to, if we are in assignment 3 or assignment 4 or labs or Canvas, maybe we would like to highlight the fact that that is where we are. Notice that right now, it doesn't tell you, where we are. See, that doesn't tell you. We would like to maybe highlight it and say, "Yep, this is where you are." Right. So let's take a look at the implementation of navtsx. What we can do is look at this, right, to see the location that we're in, right? So and then make some logic, right, to highlight, certain pieces in the URL in the DOM, right? So we can use the use location, and I think use location is it's in the same place where link is. So let's import that, and we say const use location, and we can display the content of a location. We can say, let's put it let's wrap this here so we can display the content of the location. So right here, we can say, JSON, stringify, JSON, stringify location. Okay, that's what's in that object, right? In particular, we are interested in this path name, which notice it's everything that's after the hash. See that? So we say path name. So let's take a look at just the path name. So we can say, we can extract the path name. If you say location.path name, there it is. So path name is labs A3. See that? Or we can do it a little more modern. We can destruct the location and extract the path name like that, right? We still have the path name, right? So notice that these links, if we add the class active, notice that it gets highlighted. See this wrap around like that, right? So if I highlight this one, active, notice that it highlights that one. But we would like to be able to do that programmatically, right? Where I don't want to always highlight labs. I only want to highlight labs if I am indeed in the labs. And the way I know I'm in the labs is that if this particular string has in the string has the keyword labs. Same thing if I am in hello world, right? If it has the hello keyword in there, right? I know that I could maybe just highlight the hello world. Or if I'm on Canvas, then I would like to highlight Canvas. Okay. So yeah, so here, instead of this being hard-coded as active, I would like this to be an expression. I would like to add active if we are in labs, or here add active if we are in hello, and so on and so forth. All right, so the way we can do that is that this can be converted into an expression as opposed to a hard-coded string, right? So I can convert this into an expression and then use the new backtick, right? So that I can embed some computation in here. It says I want to be active only if the path name contains the keyword hello, meaning I can say path name. I can make it an expression here. I can say if path name dot include, right, the string hello, right? Does it? If it does, then I want to add the keyword active. Otherwise, I just the empty string, right? So if we call hello, notice that it is indeed highlighted. See that? Look at that. It's very light. You can almost not see it. So instead of tabs, maybe we can use pills. Yeah, that's more like it, right? So when I'm in labs, notice that it doesn't highlight hello world, right? So we can go to the code and do the same thing here. We can convert this into an expression, curly bracket, right? So we can embed here some expressions. And instead of using hard-coded double quotes, I'm going to use a template so that I can embed here some logic. Right? I'll load an expression here. It'll look very similar to this here, right? So this will be path name. If the path name includes the string labs, right? Does it? If yes, then this whole thing evaluates to an active. Otherwise, it evaluates to an empty string. There. So now I can highlight click on between the two, right? And it highlights the pill that I'm in, the string that I'm in, right? So finally, let's do it for Canvas, right? So I'll just copy this, right? I'll just copy that expression and I'll replace this right here, right? But this is for Canvas, that, right? So now if I click on Canvas, notice that I'm highlighting between the two. Right? And in the labs, probably I'll want to do something similar for assignment 3 and 4. Okay. There you have it. We can use these embedded expressions, right, to calculate the classes on the fly, right, based on very simple expressions, right? So yeah, so here are quite a few exercises for you to practice how to work with classes. In particular, you can import CSS, right? Just like any other piece of source. Obviously, this eventually is going to be in the transpiled output when this gets built, right? This will appear in the link, right, in the head tag of the HTML document, right? It's not going to literally be in the JavaScript, right? But yeah, classes work just like classes in HTML. The CSS works just like regular CSS in HTML and CSS. So I'll let you do that. It is importing the local directory, index.css. It's in the same directory, right? So index.css and index.tsx are in the same directory, right? And the tsx is loading the CSS. Here's another example where we have a local variable, right? And we're using it to be concatenated, right, to a class name. So this would be WDBG, and then we're appending whether it's blue or red or yellow, right, to render the various classes. So I'll let you do that. All right, so styles. Let's talk about styles. So yeah, so let me copy that. And so in here on A3, let me create a file for this, right? And let's discuss styles. Okay. So basically, not only do you have class, obviously, just like any HTML and CSS, but you have the style attribute. The style attribute that, remember that I told you, never use in an HTML document. Well, here it's actually very common to use the style attribute in React JS. I don't particularly like it, but it's a preference and it's widely used. So I'm gonna cover it, the syntax, so you are familiar with it. Okay. Now style, unlike the when you use style in HTML, the style attribute takes as argument a string. Okay. And just like the class attribute also takes a string. And we just saw, right, that in here, the class, right, the value of this expression always evaluates to a string. Now, we are dynamically computing what the string is using this expression, right? We're concatenating strings, but nevertheless, class, even though you can have an embedded expression, the whole thing, it evaluates to a string, basically, right? Not unlike the class attribute in HTML, which is also a string, yes? But not so style. Style in HTML, regular HTML, is a string, right? Where you have properties and values, CSS properties and values separated by a semicolon, right? Not in React.js, right? So styles behave quite differently in React.js than they do in HTML, okay? So the big change here is that obviously it's an expression, never a string. It's never a string, right? Instead, it's an expression. That's what the outer curly brackets mean. And then the value of the expression is a JSON object. See that? Now the syntax looks a little weird, right? Because you have these double curly brackets, right? And at first, they might be a little bit jarring. So what the heck are those double curly brackets? The outer curly bracket is just that this is an expression, right? And then the inner curly bracket, this is just JSON. It's a JSON object that has property value, property value, property value. Okay. Now, you still use colon, very much like the style syntax. Right? When you use CSS, it's name, the property name, colon, and then the value, semicolon. And then the property, colon, the value, semicolon. Right? But this is JSON. You still use colons, right, to separate the property and the value, right? But we don't use semicolons in JSON. We use commas, regular commas, comma, 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 comma. So that's you have to be careful, right? The difference between the way you write it out in CSS instead of a style attribute and how you do it in a style in React.js. The other big difference is that these properties in HTML and CSS, these are strings, right? But these are property names. And property names, right, in JSON, right, typically they are camel cased, right? In React, I think in styles in HTML and CSS, this would be a CSS property. It would be dash, right? The name of this property in React in HTML CSS would be background color, right? That would be the actual property name. Right? But right, we are in two worlds, right? The target CSS that this is going to generate and the high level language that we're using to create that dynamic content, right? So all the dash character are converted into their capitalized version, right? So it'd be background color, capital C, okay? So careful there. Also, unlike regular CSS and style attribute, property values that you would normally not put in quotes, like 10 pixels, right? Here, you do have to put in quotes, right? It's a string. 10 pixels is a string, right? So those are the major differences between the style attribute being used in React.js and the style attribute being used in plain old HTML/CSS, right? So you have to be careful. And here's another a couple examples where we are providing the style and the object is being declared up here, right? We first declare a couple of objects that contain some basic properties of color and padding, and then we declare two more objects in terms of those base properties, right? So for instance, blue is, we are copying the content of the padding 10 here at the end of the blue object, right? And we're then copying both the foreground black, right, and the padding of 10 pixels around, right? We're copying those two. So we're reusing these two here, right? And then having some background color for the background red. Right? Now these two objects are then being used, right, to paint these two divs. Right, so this outside is an expression. That's what these curly brackets are here too. Then here's the JSON that we're using, directly applied to that div, right? So we can bring that into assignment 3, styles. I guess we never exported it. Styles. There you go. And there it is. Yes, there's the 3 divs. Okay. So yeah. All right. So So I think we did examples of this of conditional outputs, right? So I'm not going to do it again. All right, child components. Child components, very, very cool new feature, right, of React.js. That it allows you to deal with the body, right, of the components, right? Notice that up to this point, none of our components, right, have had a body, right, inside. They have all been, self-closing tags, right? Starting from app TSX, right? App TSX, the way you use it is a self-contained, right, closing tag. And all the ones that we have built, right? The Hello World, Labs, Canvas, they are all self-closing. None of them have a body. But certainly we can deal with body. Right? Notice that this hash router, somebody wrote in the React Router DOM, right? The hash router. And notice that there's a body, between an opening and closing tag, right, of the hash router. Same thing for routes. Routes also has a body, right? This is the body of the route. So somebody wrote code, right, for routes that certainly is doing something with the body, right? So let's learn how to deal with the body of the tag. Okay. So let's see. Let's do a simple example, right? Highlight, and we'll put it here. Highlights, right? And let's copy the content. Okay. So notice what this highlights does, right? So this highlight, the way we're going to use it. Let's in assignment 3, let's have some lorem ipsum. So in assignment 3, if I go to assignment 3, right, and we have here a long piece of text. Right, we say, lorem ipsum, lorem ipsum, there it is. Maybe something, there we go. And if we render it, there it is, right? Lorem ipsum. So just like H2 is formatting this A3 to be bold, right, and big, I would like to be able to do something similar. I like to be able to maybe highlight, right, this text right here. There it is. See that? It highlighted it. Let's see what's going on. So my highlight, we wrote that. We wrote it. And what's happening is that this body, what's in between the opening and closing tags, is being passed as an argument, as a parameter, to the highlight, okay, that we wrote. And we'll see what it does in a minute, right? So it passes it. And what is it doing? Right? So presumably what it's doing is, according to this, is returning the same content that was already there, but transformed a little bit. And that's basically what we did with the assignments. Assignment 3. Assignment 3 is what? It's the same content, but formatted a little bit. It's a little bit different, right? It has some additional, well, not behavior, but a different look and feel, right? That's how we formatted assignment 3. So we're doing our own little invented formatting. That what it's doing is that it's taking the content that you pass it as in to the component, and it's returning it, but slightly modified, right? Let's see what it does. Okay, the way it receives it is as a parameter in the parameter list of the function that implements our component, right? It receives it as a React node, right? So it's coming as and it has to have that very specific name. It has to be called children. Also notice that we are using curly brackets. See that? So it's a destruct, meaning this here, right? React.js is passing this to the highlight function as an object of which there is a property called children. We destruct it and assign it to a local constant called children. So we destruct it into a local children constant, right? From the object that is being passed as an argument, which has a property children. We map it to this children here. What are we doing with that? We are rendering it verbatim, right? We are rendering whatever you passed it, that's what we're going to render, but not before wrapping around it a couple things, right? We are wrapping a whole span around it, right, where we style the background and the color. Background yellow and color red. And that's why this renders as is. Does that make sense? Okay. This is a very, very powerful strategy, right, for manipulating data, right? And obviously there's many libraries that use this technique. Certainly Hashrouter is doing that. Routes is doing that, right? It's taking this as an argument, okay, and this is saying, okay, well, I'm creating a kind of like a switch case statement that I'm going to look at each one of the paths, right? And if it matches, right, then it's going to render this component or that other component, right? Very powerful mechanism. All right, and okay, so then finally, let's look at the add TSX. This is a different add TSX that we had before that it didn't work. So let me show you what this does, right? So let's declare here on A3 and add that TSX. And let's look at the body, right? Let's see what it does. Okay. Basically, notice that we just saw that we can receive parameters, right, in the parameter list of the component. Here we're receiving an object that has two parameters, A and B, using the function destruct operator that we saw earlier, right? And then inside, right, we are just using it to render the values of A, the values of B. Why are you rendering the same line? Okay, whatever. And the value of B, and then the value of A plus B, right? Because the component is used, it's called add, right? So now the way I can use this from my lab 3 is that I can bring in add, the component that we just built, right? But notice it's not happy, right? And actually it broke, right? And it's not happy it's because add is expecting you to pass it A and B, right? It's expecting you to call it, you know, I guess this is the equivalent of doing this, right? You can wrap, do add, and you're going to pass an objects, right, of A and A like that, right? And like that. Right, so what does that do? There it is, right? It's add, it's adding A, B, and then add B. Oh, why is it rendering like that? Add. Oh, maybe you should need another BR here. There it is, right? So it's rendering A, it's rendering B, and then A plus B is 3, right? So basically it's a function call. We're calling that function, we're passing the object is destructing it, right, A and B, and then we're using it locally, right? Obviously this syntax is awful, it's horrible. Actually, let me change this to divs so I don't need the those extra BRs. Yeah, there you go. There it is, right? There it is. So another more compact syntax, instead of doing this like this, is to actually use the add syntax like a tag and pass it A equal, right, and B equal 4 or something, right? Like that, an expression. And this renders the same way, right? 2 and 4 is 2 plus 4 is 6, right? So basically, this is the equivalent of calling the function with an object, right, with properties A and B, right? And the add is going to destruct those properties so that it can use them internally for rendering, right? And this is a very common, very popular syntax of using a very familiar HTML syntax, right? Of using attributes, values, right? To pass values down to a component, right? And parameterize it, pass it in the function parameter list, right? All right. Yeah. So with this, I'd like to show you bringing together a lot of these ideas all into one quick component that renders a list of to-dos, right? It also allows us to introduce the notion of being able to work with data structures, right? Like arrays and objects and whatnot, right? JSON objects. So let's create this to-do item. So basically, we want to create a to-do item, like a list of a whole bunch of items, right? So first we'll focus on an individual line item, right? A to-do item that has maybe a checkbox, has a title, whether it's completed or not, right? So let's do that, right? So let's create a to-do item. To-do item like that. And let's copy its content and let's go over it. Okay, so to-do item takes as argument an object, and that object, I'm sorry, that object has a property called to-do. That to-do that you're passing is an object itself. So it's an object within an object. And here I'm initializing. So if you don't pass me this attribute, this parameter that is an object, I'm going to initialize it locally into this object, right? So if you don't pass it me, that's fine. I have a default value, right? That I have a little object, right? That has three properties: done, whether it's true or false, the title of the to-do, right? And the status, whether it's completed or not, right? And the way I'm rendering it, I'm rendering the to-do as a line item. So I'm expecting that all these to-do items are going to be inside of a big UL or an OL, right? And I'm going to render first a checkbox whose value, whether it's going to be checked or not by default, is going to be initialized with the done flag of the to-do object, right? Which, if you don't pass me anything, it'll be true. I'll render the to-do and also whether the status is completed or not. Okay. So to render a couple of these, right, we can go to the A3 and render it here. We can say, UL, right, and maybe class list group, right, and then let's render each one of these to-dos. To-do item, there's one. Let's render 3. And notice how they render, right? There they are. So I'm always buying the milk. It's done. It's completed, presumably, right? And it renders using a list because I'm using the list group class, right? So it's looking a little prettier instead of just those ugly bullets, right? But I could be a little more specific, right? And I can pass you an actual to-do, right? And to-do object. So you're expecting an object. So I can pass you an object, and the property that you're expecting is a property called to-do, which is expecting an object, right? So I can pass you an object, right, where the done is also true, and the title is buy bread, right, and completed. Wait, what was it? I forget. Status in progress. Okay. Now, if we render it, there it is. See that buy bread in progress. Oh, so it's not done. So this is false. There it is. It's not selected by default. Right. So yeah. So I can pass the objects in here. Right. To do object. Right. This is done. True. Title. Feed dogs. Right. And status completed. Right, and there it is. So feed dogs completed and everything, right? Or even better, I could have an array of these things, right? So let's do that. Let's have a JSON array that contains several to-dos. So here we'll create a file called to-do JSON, and we'll paste these an array of objects, right? That of several to-do, title, status, and done, right? And then we'll create a component outside, right, that will be able to iterate over these to-dos, right, and render them all, right? So here they are, to-do list, which is going to do the following. First is going to import the to-do item. It's going to import the array of to-dos and store it in a local constant to-dos. And what it's going to do is that it's going to have the UL, and then it's going to map over each one of the to-dos. For each to-do, it's going to return the to-do item, and you're going to pass each object into the to-do, right? That contains whether it's done, the title, the status, right? And it returns each to-do item, which basically this is computing a new array, right, of all these to-dos that are going to be eventually concatenated. Throw away the square brackets, the commas, right, all into one single big string, right? That's going to contain a whole bunch of LIs. And it's going to render a list, right? So if we go to A3, we can bring in the to-do list, right? That renders, and there it is, right? So here's my to-do list, right? This is the one I built manually, whereas this one was built programmatically as I iterate over the array of to-dos. That make sense? All right, yeah. Okay, so let's take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to focus on the second half of the assignment, which is re-implementing the Canvas application that we've been working for the last month or so, right? And we're going to bring over a lot of the HTML, or you can just use what I'm suggesting here. But certainly you're welcome to bring some of that. We'll do some of that. We'll bring some of the HTML, some of the CSS that we've done in previous assignments, and try to use as most possible, right? So we don't have to reinvent the whole thing from scratch, right? Yeah. So let's take this quick break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. All right, so we've been going through several lab exercises to practice several skills to learn some basic understanding of the JavaScript language, React.js components, being able to parameterize them, implement navigation, right? So let's move on to the second half of the assignment, which asks us to bring together all those skills, right, into and apply them to build something that we've been working on throughout the semester. Right? So here we have the entry point of the Canvas application. We've been using HTML and CSS, right, to implement the Canvas navigation, course navigation, assignments, grades, home, right, various aspects of the Canvas learning management system, right? So let's revisit that. We'll start off with implementing just a few components just to give you an idea, and we'll start bringing over, right, a lot of the HTML and CSS that we worked on in previous assignments, right? So that we can reuse a lot of that. Okay. Let's see. Wait. Okay, there we go. Let me bring the chat in here. Okay, so let's do this, right? So I'm gonna copy this. Copy this content, and I'm going to bring it over to our Canvas component that we had just started. Right now, it's just a placeholder, right? I'm just going to replace the whole thing. I'm going to remove the nav component because I I don't want to use that particular component to navigate to labs or hello world, right? What we could do, we can put it maybe in the canvas navigation. We can put it in there. Right? So if we go back and to canvas, right, we have the left-hand side, we have the canvas navigation, and on the right-hand side, we're going to have various placeholders, right, for if we navigate to the account, right, where we have the profile and things like that, we'll show the account. If we click on the dashboard in the canvas navigation, then we'll show the dashboard. If we navigate to a course, then we show the courses. So these three right now are placeholders. They're going to become components, right? And then we're going to wrap them inside of a hash route and only display them depending on whether we navigate one way or another. Okay. So we have that for now, and so let's focus first on implementing the canvas navigation. So I'm going to provide a very rough implementation of it, but we'll try to bring maybe some of the CSS from prior assignments, right? Maybe the index.css on the canvas navigation, and perhaps use the some of those classes, right, to display this as close as possible. Also, we're going to be using a set of icons, right, that bring together a lot of the best icons libraries out there, right, including Font Awesome plus a whole bunch of other ones, right? So yeah, let's implement. So under Canvas, we're going to create a Canvas navigation, right? So under Canvas, we'll implement navigation, and then the component, the navigation in here, right? So let's see what we have here. Let's grab that. Let's paste it in there. And so basically, we are going to create an array of the various links that we want, right, to navigate from the Canvas navigator, right? We're going to navigate to the account, dashboard, the courses, calendar. Certainly, you're welcome to implement many more. And so once I have that data structure, right, I'm going to iterate over that data structure, creating several links, right? Several links inside of a UL, right? That and those links are going to have these two attributes, right? That are going to allow us to navigate to a URL that starts with Canvas, but then ends with /canvas/ account or Canvas / dashboard / Canvas / courses, right? And then it's going to render the icon as well and render the label. And the label, again, the label will be account, dashboard, courses, and calendar. Now, presumably we are applying this class. It would be stored in a local index.cs, which we don't have. Actually, we do. We have it from a prior assignment. So we'll bring that over. And hopefully this will look as we expect. Plus, we are using here these icons that we installed, I think it was last week, right? That we installed React icons. And notice what I've done is that I've created a little object that contains the label plus the icon that is going to be represented here for each one of the line items. Okay. So anyway, we can bring that over, right, and replace the placeholder of the Canvas navigation. Right. So let's do that. So here in the Canvas, we'll import it. And we'll replace this with the Canvas navigation, like that. Let's see what it renders as. All right, so it's looking for the index.css, which we never brought over, right? But let's just comment that out for a second. I want to see what it looks like. Okay, that's what it looks like, right? It's a regular line item, regular UL with the default
what is it, bullet points, right? The text, they look like just like hyperlinks. But let's bring over the CSS that we worked so hard in prior assignments. Also, this UL is absolutely inspired, right? Let me close this. Close other. This is inspired with the HTML that we worked on so hard in prior assignments. So if we go to public, canvas, navigation, indent.xml, right? So this UL is indeed this UL, right? It's that UL. See that UL class WD canvas navigation is this same right here. But instead of rendering this hard coded, we are iterating over this object, right? And rendering each one of these line items. And this line items is identical to each one of these line items. See? We have li. Some of them have WD active, right? And so notice that the class name is that if it includes the label, then we add the deactive. Otherwise, we don't, right? Using the location, right? And this renders a hyperlink. And this is the hyperlink right here. Just this hyperlink href. This renders as a hyperlink, right? But instead of being an actual hyperlink, right, it's going to add the hash in it, right? So yeah, let's bring that CSS that we have here that we worked on prior. So it's canvas navigation. I'm going to copy that CSS. I'm going to bring it over. I'm just going to paste it in the navigation like that. So that, let's see, still renders. So that if I go in here, I can uncomment this. And there it is, right? Now it renders correctly, right, with the icons. And if I click on each one of them, notice at the bottom, you can see Canvas account. At the bottom here, right, you can see Canvas dashboard, Canvas courses, Canvas calendar. So if you click on it, see that? We add /account, which adds the active class, right? So if I click here, this is dashboard. So it's looking for dashboard. So if the URL includes the label, then it changes the active. You know, it converts it into active. Make sense? So yeah, excellent. So all the other components is going to be, you know, kind of the same mechanism. We're going to bring over the HTML that we worked on in prior assignments, right? And we're going to try and parameterize it using for loops and if statements and data structures instead of the hard-coded UL and LI. Okay. All right, so we're going to focus now on implementing the dashboard. And in the dashboard, we want to render a whole bunch of courses, right? As cards, right? And so, but instead of hard coding it, we want to create a data structure. I'm going to give you a data structure that contains an array of courses, right? That we're going to iterate over, and for each one, we're going to render a course, right? So a good place to start might be that, right? We create a dashboard. So Canvas, we can implement a dashboard. So dashboard. We can have an index that in TSX in there, index.tsx. Okay. And we do function dashboard. Return this, we export. So for now, right, we could just copy the old index.html here, right? This whole thing, not all of it, I guess. And bring it over and say, paste that in there. We would need to replace all the classes with class name, right? So we'll do class, we would replace with class name. So class name, replace all. Wait, do we want to do all of them? Wait a minute. I think so, right? Yeah. There we go. Okay. There we go. Okay. Then we have style, right? And style has like a width of 300. We can also replace that. So it would be class, right? This would be style. It would be an object, right? So we'll need 2 curly brackets. The property is width, right? And then the value is 300 pixels, right? There we go. And how do you switch them all? Place, enter, replace all. So we're going to replace all of them. There we go. Okay, so that works. This style, same thing. We can copy, find, and then this would be max height would become max height with a capital H, and it would be 100 pixels, 150 pixels, 150. So let's replace all of them. There we go. Anything else? We have this text decoration. We can copy and replace it with, let's see. Again, this would be curly, and this would be text decoration would be a capital D, right? None. I think that needs to be a quote, and then this would be comma. Font weight also would be capital W like that, and this would be comma. Navy, probably that's a quote also, and this would be color. That can stay like that. Okay, I think that's it. So let's do all of them. Okay. For the all right, so we have a whole bunch of these, right? But we only really need one, right? We only really need one. So it really would be which one? Let's see. We have the row, we have the column. So this is the one that we copied and pasted over and over. So I'm just gonna remove all the other ones. We only really need one, but then we're gonna iterate over an array. All right, so we can just remove that. So we really need just one. And what else? These hyperlinks are really going to be links, right? So these are going to be link, right? These are we're going to close the link here. Instead of HTML, there's going to be 2, right? And there's going to be some expression. We'll need to import the link. React link, right? What else? I think that's it. Okay. So we have a dashboard, and so we can go back to our canvas, not here, in our canvas here, right? And so this would be the dashboard. Let's see what it looks like. We can load the dashboard. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, so that's what it looked like. Obviously, we don't want to show the account and the courses right now. We want to show the dashboard. So if we click on the dashboard, we like to see dashboard, right? If we see account, we will see account, right? So this on the right-hand side would need to be a navigation, right? A hash router, right? Which we already have a hash router. We need a whole bunch of routes. So to implement that, this on the right-hand side, right? These would need to be routes. So we can, import the routes. We need the route, right, from React Router DOM. And so this whole thing on the right-hand side, this would become routes. A couple of these routes, right? And so if this is dashboard, dashboard, then we render dashboard, right? If we see account, I would see account, and this if we see courses, then it's courses, right? So now if we see, click on account, we render account. We click on dashboard, we see the dashboard, and we see courses, we have courses, right? That makes sense? Now, the way we would want to navigate to courses if we click on the go, right? If we click here, right, it would go to courses. Right now, it's going to an old implementation of the HTML, right? But in what we'd like to be able to do is that it would be slash canvas slash courses slash and then the ID of the course, right? So courses would be slash courses. So let's change that. So this link would have to be in the dashboard, and it would have to be instead of this link here or this right here, right? This would be a link. This would be link, and this would be to would go to Canvas courses. Okay. So now if I click on this, it navigates to courses. Yes. So yeah, so now we have the whole navigation. Even though notice that when I click on the link, this highlights as courses, which is perfect. That's how it's supposed to work, right? We'll show you then that courses, right? Okay, now I don't want to have just one course. I want to have a whole bunch of courses. So let's implement a JSON object that has that data, right? And so here's the JSON object. And so for now, let me show you, right? I'm just going to put it here for now, right? I'm going to say new file courses.json, right? And I'm going to just paste that in there. Now dashboard can load those courses. You can say, import the courses. So courses from courses, right? And so now all these divs that render each one of them can. Oh wait, no. I think it's this one, right? Yeah. This would be the column, right? So we're going to iterate over that array. Now, it usually it's very useful to just render the array down below, maybe somewhere out of the way, so you know what the array looks like. Let's say pre-code, right? JSON. So that's the array, right? That has 3 objects down below. So it's great for debugging. You're going to iterate over that object. And so what we're going to do is that we're going to generate this, right? We're going to generate that. Oops. What did I do? No, parentheses. There we go. Parentheses, like that. So that's going to be the result of a computation of some function, right? And which is going to be inside of a map. So this is going to be the course, right? And mapping over the array of courses like that, right? So as it's iterating, it's going to return
that div for each one of the courses, right? And this whole thing is an expression. This whole thing is an expression like that. An expression for. Oh wait, no, I'm missing another parentheses here. Missing another parentheses here. There we go. Like that. Okay. Let's save that. So notice that now it renders as 3, right? 3 courses because there's 3, right? These 3. But instead of using these titles, right, they're all hard-coded, we can use the name here, right? So for instance, where the hard-coded is right there, so we can use this as an expression, course.name, I think it's called. There it is. See, rocket propulsion, aerodynamics, spacecraft, right? And notice that these all have a unique identifier. that if I click on this, it would be nice if I can pass as an argument the ID here, whatever the ID. But if I pass the ID, the courses, I'm no longer in the courses because it doesn't match, right? And so what we can do is that here where we have the route, we can say, well, if it's /courses, or actually if it contains anything else, including the ID. Actually, we can grab the ID here, the course ID here, CID. We can grab it, right? And then maybe inside of a courses component, we can grab that ID and render the correct course, right? So let's do that. So that in the dashboard now, instead of just navigating to courses, I can now include in the URL, I can include the ID as part of the URL, right? So this is still working, right? If I go to dashboard and I click on this, right? Oops. Oh, because I don't have the ID. I'm not passing the ID. Yeah, it's expecting the ID, right? That's actually good. Let's change the URL so that it includes the ID at the end. So this would be an expression now. So I'm going to put a curly bracket around this. And I want to append the ID at the end. So I'm going to put an expression at the end like that. And this is going to be course.id. Notice that slash, right? Notice that I'm using underscore ID only because I know that eventually these are all going to be primary keys in a non-relational database called Mongo. And those primary keys names are all called underscore ID. So I mean, kind of, foreshadowing, right, where we're going, and using, future proofing this code, right? All right, so if we go back now here, if I click on regular propulsion, notice that indeed I have RS101 at the end. I can go back. If I click on this, as we get RS102, right, and then RS103 in the URL. Okay. And so that once I go here, I would like to be able to parse that. We know how to do that, right? We can create in here, and we can create courses, right? And maybe a index.tsx, right? That has a function courses, return h2 courses, and then explosives, so that in here, instead of having hard-coded courses, right, we can have the courses component, right? Okay, we have the courses component, but now it's a component. That means that if I navigate to it, I can do some code. I can extract that I called it course ID, I believe, right? In here, I call it course ID. So in courses, I can retrieve the parameter course ID, using the hook use params, right? And we need React, we'll need use params, and here we should be able to display the ID. CID, sorry, CID. There it is. See that? RS102. So 101, there it is, parsing from the URL. This would be R02, right? This is R03. See that? So I'm parsing that. So that means that I can use that as an index into that into this JSON data structure, right? Which now this data structure I needed not only on the dashboard, but I also need it on the courses. So the question begins, well, where should I put it, right? It's kind of like a shared resource, right? So for now, let's put it under a directory called like a database, right? So let's put it in this common place, put it under a database. Right, so dashboard now, okay, can't find it. So it needs to go up one, then down to database, and then down to courses, yeah. So now courses can do the same thing, right? It can import the courses, import the courses from there, So here are all the courses. We can do pre-JSON, blah, blah, blah. So these are all the courses, but I don't want to render all the courses. I only want to render the courses whose ID is RS103, this one. I want to kind of retrieve this from the database, right? So I can filter. I can say const the course is the courses. I want to find the course whose ID is CID, right? And then I can render the name, right? I can say the name course and then the name here, right? Course. Oh, this might be null, maybe. There it is. See that space design. So if I click on here, this is rocket propulsion. If I click on aerodynamics, is aerodynamics, right? And if I click on space design, it's that one. See that? And so instead of displaying all of them here, we can just render course, the one course, the course that I clicked on with the ID, the number, the name, right? Right, aerodynamics, there it is, aerodynamics, right? Or rocket propulsion. See that? So now we can dynamically render content based on the IDs and how we're navigating through this. Okay, instead of making it hard coded like we've been doing so far for the last month or so, right? And that's what this assignment is walking you through, right? So here we have there's the database courses.json that we moved it in there. Instead of just putting it as a single file, I'm creating an index.tsx that it's actually going to collect several pieces of data, not only the courses.json, but the modules, right? The assignments, the grades, all that is going to be a whole bunch of JSON files. And they're all going to be collected inside of this index.tsx in the database. Right? It's not a real database, obviously, right? It's just okay, this should be TS, not TSX. It doesn't matter, but because it has no rendering, right? It's only just data in here, right? So let me rename it. So this is TS. And so this just imports the courses and then exports it as an object that contains courses. So this is equivalent to courses like that, right? But it's unnecessary. So this is the equivalent. We did the dashboard, right? And we created the routes. And we also made, okay, so we want to make the dashboard default, right? So in the index here, we're going to add a navigate. I think it's here, right? Navigate. Oh, maybe not. Navigate. Right. So by default, right? If you by default, it'll want to go to the dashboard, right? So when we first navigate to the, right? So here, right? If we navigate to Canvas, right? It's going to automatically jump us into the dashboard, right? So I don't have to click and go to the dashboard, but it automatically takes us there. And then you can navigate down to the courses and whatnot, right? So the courses screen, this is what we just implemented, right? We have the course ID. We found the course given that the ID of that course, and we actually loaded the course from the database, not directly from the JSON, right? So yeah, notice that we did it from the database, not the JSON file, which is the same thing, right? And then we brought in the courses in the navigator. Okay. The course navigation is very similar to the Canvas navigation, right? Right inside of the course, and that also highlights the where are you navigating within the course, right? So, and I believe I give you all that. We'll need to bring the index.tsx that we implemented in the previous assignment, right? Under the courses, navigation, that index.css, we can copy that over, right, and paste it in there, so that we are importing it, and that can be rendered in the courses screen, right? In the courses screen, we can have the course navigator, right? In the courses screen here, we have the course navigator, which we can import it. There it is, right? Which if we click on it, notice that this is the home modules. We click on it, notice that it adds modules at the end, but there's no mapping for it for our routes, right? Because it's looking for courses and then the ID, right? But if we append anything, it doesn't match. So we have to go back and tweak that a little bit, right? So in the Canvas router, right, the pattern that we want is /courses / the ID of the course and then anything star, because that can be home, it could be a whole bunch of stuff, and that in itself can be its own routes, right, underneath inside of courses, right? So there it is. So if I get home, modules, Piazza, right, all that gets rendered, and then on the right hand side we would display the home, we would display the modules, Piazza, grades, right here, which each one of those is its own component, right? Which the assignment kind of gives you, right? It gives you a div here, right, with the routes that if it's a home, right, it shows H1 home, right? If it's modules, it shows modules, Piazza, blah, blah, blah. Notice they're just headings, right? Not real content. But that, right, that, the assignment goes through it and you implement each one of those pieces as you go, right, in the courses, right? So we can paste that in there. We'll need to import all those from React Router DOM. I guess here, that's fine. We don't need to import this again. Anything else? And there it is. So if we go home, we show home, modules, Piazza, grades, right, assignments, each one of these, right? And then the assignment walks you through each one of like modules, the module screen, right? And so on and so forth. All right. All right. Yeah. So let me do at least the modules. I did because I do want to. Yeah. Let me show you because I am providing the data for you for the modules, right? I am providing a link that contains data for courses, modules, assignments, and you can copy it from here. So here's the raw. You can save that. And we're going to save it in NEU 2024 spring, this course, and in the source and Canvas, we have the database, and right now you don't have courses. So this is the module. So there's modules.json in here. And then, all right, Raza, sure. And then in the once we have that, we can add it to our database, right? In our database, in here we can bring over the modules and import the modules. Import modules from modules. It's added here. Modules. I can't type modules. Okay. And then once we have that, we can implement the list of modules, right? So let's implement the list of modules, a component that renders the list of modules under the courses. Okay, which is basically just going to grab the modules from the database. I'm going to grab the modules from the database, and depending now, if you look at the modules, the data for the modules right here, it's so there's several objects. There's I think like 9 objects, right? And so each module has its own ID, the ID of the module, but then it also has kind of like a foreign key, not really. It has the ID of the course that this module belongs to, right? So module M11, right, is part of the course rocket propulsion or something, right? 101. And the second one as well, the second module also is from RS-101. See that? And the third one as well, RS-101. But then the next object is RS-102. It's a different course, right? So we have to iterate over this depending on the course that we have. We're only going to extract those modules that are relevant to the currently selected course, right? So this is what this does, right? Module list. So module list here, it extracts the course. I call it CID, and that's course ID, right? So it's only extracting the modules that belong to the course that you've selected on the URL, and then just iterates over the modules, creating a line item. So this UL is taken straight from the module list that we worked on together in previous assignment in the HTML and CSS assignment, right? And and removed all the hard-coded stuff, right? And used the div, if you remember, right, instead of the line item. Okay. So yeah, so let's render this. Let's see what it looks like. For instance, we could for the meantime, in the courses, okay, here's modules. We can just remember, render the module list. So the module list. We don't have the indexes yet. We have to bring over the index from the prior assignments. So let's see, accounts, courses, modules, index.css. So I'm going to copy that from the previous assignment, and I'm going to bring it over to module list. There it is. Okay, so modules, there it is. So if you have the modules, so I also added some mechanism, right, that we haven't discussed on being able to toggle on and off, right? And let me just go over that real quick. You don't have to implement that; it's not required, but I'm giving it to you anyway. Also, it's using a technology that we haven't discussed yet, a technique that we haven't discussed yet. But let me just go over it real quick. And again, it's fine if it doesn't work for you. So for module lists, show you, and we'll see more. This is a topic that actually we're going to cover next week when we talk about state, right? And state is the capability of variables to change their value over time. Right now, none of our implementation has allowed data to change over time, right? Still has been all static, right? We're iterating over static data, right? And we're not changing, toggling things, changing state from true, false, and things like that. It's always have the same data, the same objects. So next week, we're going to introduce a topic that allows us to change the state, the value of things, over time. And for that, we're going to introduce the use state hook, right? That allows you to create a value, a state variable, a variable that can change over time, plus a mutator that allows you to set or modify the value of this variable over time. Okay, and the hook gives us back an array whose first element is the variable, and the second element is the mutator that allows us to change the state variable. So here we're using the square brackets destruct operator, right, to extract each one of the items, right? The first item is the variable, the second item is the mutator. And then it also takes as argument the initial state, right? So what I'm doing here is that I am initializing the state variable to be the first module. So I'm saying, hey, the selected module is the first module. Yeah. And so then I use that state variable to iterating over the I'm iterating over the data in the modules, right? In the modules, I have the name of the module, blah, blah, and then I have a bunch of lessons, right? So these lessons, I want to toggle them, hide or show them, right? I want to show the lessons or not, okay? And so I either show the lessons or not based on whether you're selected. So here I display first the name of the module, a couple of icons, and then I either display the lessons or I don't, depending on whether the ID of the selected module is the same ID of the current module that I'm iterating over. If it is, then I display the lessons. Otherwise, I don't display the lessons. And they can only be one selected module. So my implementation is limited, right? Because in the real Canvas, you can have a lot of modules displaying at the same time, right? My implementation is that only one can be selected at any one time. So, it's a very trivial implementation. You're welcome to improve on it, right? So that you can have multiple open simultaneously. So absolutely not required. But I thought it was a cute way to start introducing the topic for next week, right? Which is state management, right? So yeah. So if it is, then if it is selected, then I show it. And the way I toggle it, right, is that each line item has an on click, right? So each one of these guys, right, each one of these titles has an on click. Which what I do is that if you do click it, then I call the mutator, and I make that particular module the selected one, right? So I'm iterating over each module, each line item. Each line item has an on click, and if you click any one of them, that becomes the currently selected one, right? And if it's the currently selected one, it checks to see if it changes. Check to see, ooh, is that ID equal to the ID of the module I'm looking at? Yes. Ooh, then none of the other ones is. It can only be one. So I show the lessons for that particular module. Okay. Anyway, that is a topic for next week. You don't have to implement that for this week. So feel free to remove this and this, right? And also remove these on click, remove this this use state, right? That is a topic for next week. All right. All right. Any questions? Before I forget, let me add this and commit. This would be assignment 3. And I'm going to push. So this will be available on branch A3. Again, please feel free to use this code or your own, right? If you find it useful, you're welcome to it. And I hope that it allows you to go a little faster, right? That many of the exercises are fully completed. Some are not, so you'll need to revisit some of those and complete those, the ones that we did not complete here in class. Same thing for the Canvas components, right? again, feel free to reuse all that. As you've seen, a lot of these are a lot of them are just copy paste, right? You have to put them in the right place. You have to get it to work, right? So again, feel free to reuse everything that I have, so that it'll give you a leg up. All right. All right. Any questions? So again, the quiz, I'm still tweaking a little bit. I'm going to make that available later tomorrow, and you'll have time from there on, right? As much time as you would normally have, but starting from tomorrow. I'm going to stop recording.